Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for the segment, we have Gab Columbro, Executive Director of FINOS and General Manager of the Linux Foundation in Europe. We're here to discuss open source and the financial services system. It is great to see you, Gab. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Hi, Jill. Thanks for having me here. Always a pleasure.
You got it. And last week, FINOS announced the findings of its 2022 State of Open Source and Financial Services Survey. What do these results indicate for the future of open source across the industry?
Well, candidly, it's been amazing results. This was our second survey. So we finally have year-on-year results, and I'm happy to report that we've seen a massive uptake in contribution from financial services. Our survey, amongst other things, found that contributions from financial institutions went up 43% year-on-year, and that is kind of a really massive result when you think about an industry that has been historically very conservative. We also have seen consumption being increased and really encouraged by financial institutions, with over 80% of financial institutions now encouraging consumption of open source software, which is again great for us and as a movement, as a community.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, having been identified as a key topic with open source. Tell us more about the growth in this particular area. Why do you think you're seeing it on that trajectory?
Look, I think this is something that I message quite often, including at the last week's events. Open source is now widely recognized in the industry very much as a way to openly collaborate across the industry and deliver value to the business, not just to the technology organization. I mean, we're all familiar with the benefits of open source as far as cost reduction, talent acquisition, faster innovation, something that big tech companies here on the West Coast are very familiar with. But I think in the last 2 years, also with the pandemic, giving kind of an acceleration to the digital readiness of this industry, we're now seeing financial institutions leveraging open source as a way to deliver faster interoperability, time to market, reduce risk. In fact, we've seen our community, FINOS, being now expanded beyond our sort of core community of sell-side banks. We're now seeing the buy side joining in. We're seeing fintechs. We're seeing regulator taking part to the conversation. And so I think in one phrase, it's really about the business value that open source can deliver to this industry.
How can organizations increase their contribution to open source in 2023?
So I think one trend that we've seen that really has unlocked a lot of these conversations and contribution to open source has been rolling out of open source program offices. A lot of these organizations, I would say qualitatively, I've seen over 20 organizations in the last year between large sell-side banks, buy-sides, even regulators rolling out open source program offices, really as a structure that helps the organization internally and externally to interact with open source. And so I think one of the key unlocking items in this journey is to roll an open source program office. But even beyond that, we still see the idea of bringing open source to the strategic level. It needs to penetrate even further into the C-suite. And I think FINOS is really doing a great job at bringing this value directly up to the C-levels in these organizations.
Tell us about the importance and impact of having clear open source leadership within a financial institution.
Look, over the last year, we've seen standards like FDC3, one of our most mature projects, really delivering this direct connectivity across the sell side and the buy side. Now we have thousands and thousands of applications running on this standard. Some people call it the fix for the desktop. I think that's one of the clear avenues of, again, furthering the value of open source into, the different business lines in financial services. I think a second major driver and sort of direction that we're seeing open source making major inroads is what we call Open RegTech, which is really our effort to deliver neutralized implementations of regulatory technology. For example, this year we've had Morgan Stanley contribute a fully open source implementation of liquidity coverage ratio, an important US regulations. We also are seeing consortia like ISDA, ICMA, and ISLA contributing their common domain model, which is actually used for the CFTC recent implementation and digital regulatory reporting. So I think interoperability and time to market, as well as regulatory technology, I think are the two main drivers for value next year.
And the FINOS team held its annual Open Source and Finance Forum in New York just recently. What were some of the key takeaways from that event?
Well, we had over 500 people join us last week on Thursday in the heart of Wall Street. And you know, first and foremost, it's hard to think 5 years ago that you would have you know, such a diverse crowd, both on an individual basis, but also in terms of the role they play in the organization. It was not just technologists, there were senior executives, some of the largest buy side and sell side organizations out there. We had regulators joining us. I think there's been a very, very concrete understanding that open source is here to stay. And so I've had personally at least 50 people walking up to me telling me, hey man, I did not expect this to be such a large event. We feel like we are on the cusp of really revolutionizing the industry. You know, a couple of years ago, I would say we have the potential to do so. Now we have a very clear and concrete feeling that we are changing the industry and building the new generation of financial technology on open source building blocks.
Mm-hmm. Since we last had you on the show, you've taken on a new role as general manager at Linux Foundation Europe. Can you tell us a bit about what your plans and focus will be for the organization in 2023?
Absolutely. I am pretty excited as an Italian native, as you can hear from my accent, to actually have taken this dual role. The Linux Foundation, of course, has already a global presence. It's the largest shared technology investment in the world. But now we understood that Europe is unique in the vision that not only the European Commission, but really all the nation states in Europe have on open source, as far as not only delivering technology innovation, but also delivering global and really collective value at social level. And also on the fact that, you know, we have a supranational entity like the European Commission that really drives the global collaboration of the 27 member states. And so we launched Linux Foundation Europe in September with the idea of really fostering local collaboration, but allowing the, you know, projects to go global using the Linux Foundation global platform. And I'm super excited. And I think next year we're going to see so many projects coming up. First and foremost, our Open Wallet Foundation, which is the first project that we plan to launch in early 2023.
Yeah, it really is quite remarkable how you can get all those nation states to come together and have a cohesive global footprint, considering all of the different, you know, cultural and societal norms that each nation state has. So it really is remarkable to see how you're able to leverage all that expertise and drive this technology forward. So to wrap up here, Gab, what's on the horizon for FINOS?
Look, I think we are, as I said, on the cusp of really making a change in the industry. I think to close the circle, as you can see in pretty much any open source community out there that grows organically and sustainably, we need more participation from the fintechs. We're actually seeing now, as of last year, a lot of investment in the concept of open source fintech. We've had, you know, examples like Move this year, OpenBB. So more and more coming, and even on the projects that are in FINOS, we're now seeing very much interest from both your West Coast venture capitalists as well as, you know, strategic investments at financial institutions. So I think we will be seeing an acceleration of investment in the realization that open source is not free. Open source is a really great go-to-market strategy, especially in a, you know, tough economic climate where, you know, upfront funding and massive seed fundings are not, you know, the thing du jour as it was maybe in the last couple of years. So I think open source will deliver immense value, not only to financial institutions, but also to ventures that really understand the business model and the potential for a, you know, viral go-to-market strategy that open source and open standards can deliver. So we're definitely focusing on that, and you'll be hearing from us much more in the area.
All right, sounds great. Appreciate the insight as always, Gab. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thanks.